Good Saturday morning. Again, I was finished with Mark. I love this, the saying here. This is the flesh of the church. This is beautiful. Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up the high mountain apart from themselves, by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzlingly white, such as no fuller on earth could bleach them. Then Elijah appeared to them, along with Moses, and they were conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Rabbi, it's good that we're here. Let's make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He hardly knew what to say. They were so terrified. Then a cloud came, casting a shadow over them, and from the cloud came a voice. This is my beloved son. Listen to him. Suddenly, looking around, the disciples no longer saw anyone but Jesus alone with them. And as they were coming down the mountain, he charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone except when the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matters to themselves, questioning what the rising from the dead meant. Then they asked him, why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? He told them Elijah will indeed come first and restore all things. Yet how is it written regarding the Son of Man that he must suffer greatly and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written of him. This text, Elijah that would point out Christ is John the Baptist. Okay, that's who it's referring to. But the beauty of the thing is, I see St. Peter wants a shortcut, the route to paradise. And so the symbol of paradise is the transfiguration. Christ's divinity is manifested in his humanity. It's dazzling, you see. And Peter says, hey, let's stick around. So the whole Old Testament is present. Elijah, see, and Moses, the law and the prophets are present before Christ. So you have the entire story of the Old and New Testament, wham, right before you. And Pete says, this is good. I buy this. Let's build the 3 tents for the 3 of you, and, we're in. He says, he didn't know what he was talking about. That's what the text says. Imagine St. Mark saying this. Mark was a disciple of St. Peter's. He said, he didn't know what the hell he was saying, And then, of course, this is my beloved son. Listen to him, you see. But then immediately as they come down the mountain, he predicts the passion, you see. Okay? And in the more enriched text, Peter denies the passion, and Christ says, get behind me, will you? What's the matter with you? Okay? So Pete has his foot in his mouth, his sandal in his mouth at the same time. He proclaims the gospel. You are the Christ. He is present to the... If that isn't, in a sense, a resurrection theme, you're seeing the glorified Christ. But the shortcut, there is no shortcut to the glorified Christ. It comes through Good Friday. And so is true of the Christian world. There is no paradise without Good Friday. We share in and fulfill those sufferings, wanting in the suffering of Christ. See? The church learned that as it became martyred. And we learned that. We are not shortcuts. We're not a magic game. We're not a magic trick. We are called into the passion of Christ to share in his grace and therefore his resurrection. I think sometimes, maybe wrong in this, but sometimes I think in some of the pieties of the church, pieties, not the faith, but the pieties, we slip very perilously towards superstition and actually would say magic, because there is some of the preaching that gets excessive on terms of piety seems to set up a contractual relationship between ourselves and Christ, saying that if you do this, you get that. If you make 7 First Fridays, you're guaranteed paradise. Maybe with the culture I grew up in, the Italian culture, Italian-American culture, but the Irish were up to their neck in it along with us. But it was that kind of mechanistic piety. It's magic. That's magic. That's not faith. We gain paradise by our fidelity to Christ, not by some magic tricks, not by fulfilling some quotas. See? If you say the rosary every day, you're guaranteed to go to paradise. If you say the rosary every day out of faith, you're not guaranteed anything, except in the sense that you are fulfilling your Christian obligations, your Christian Love for Christ. And that is the way to salvation. It's not because you're guaranteed to cut a deal. Boy, I remember that. I told you the story about Jimmy Nazzello, the kid on the street who never went to church. And I told you the story. I remember I was beefing. I went to church all the time, every day. And however, my prayers weren't fulfilled. I forgot what it was all about. It could have been as much as the Red Sox winning a game. Could have been that as a kid. And I was complaining to Jimmy. I go to church all the time, and I never get it, what I'm praying for. And Jimmy said to me, do you go there to cut a deal, or do you go there to worship God? He's a kid who never went to church, but he understood it. He was right. You don't go to church to cut a deal. You go to church to worship Christ. Here I was making all these novenas and all the rest, assuming that I would get what I wanted. See? Because I was cutting a deal. Boy, that was definitely in our culture at the time, pious culture of the 50s. It was neo-pagan, actually, in its own kind of pious way, because it was setting us up to believe that we could in some ways bring Christ into our service by doing certain kind of pious actions. Tell you, it's just the truth. It was the piety of the time, the preaching of the time, in so many ways. Maybe it was well-intended. It had to motivate people to worship. But it was a falsehood, a radical falsehood, because you can't cut deals with the Almighty. You haven't got any leverage. What you do is you bring yourself before Christ and ask, in the end, your will be done. Whatever you want from me, help me to live faithfully. My mother taught me that, and the order taught me that years later. You can't control Christ, just ask to do his will. Pray to do his will, to be faithful to him. That's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah. I hope in the end Christ will say to me upon my death, well, you did it your way. You and Frank Sinatra did it your way, but you were faithful. Not that you were perfect. That would be a farce. Christ can't lie, but he could say I was faithful. You gave it your best, given who you are and what you are, given your gifts and your fallibilities. You still walk this path. I could say I would love him to say, just like good old St. Pete and the apostles. They stumbled along too, just like you. You're a good apostle. You did all right. That would be the kind of thing I would hope to hear from Christ. Yeah, you did. You did. You did good. You know what I mean? You did all right. Not bad for a guy like you. You took care of the church. You took care of my people. You looked out for them. You're a good guy. You did all right. Glad I called you. See, that's street talk. I'm looking at a portrait of Christ right now, and it seems to me he looked like a good guy. I would think that's what he would say to me. You did okay. Yeah, you had your real flaws. Man, you had a ton of them. But in the end, you stuck it out, just like Pete and the other guys. The apostles, see? I love the apostles. They were no different than I am or anyone else. They stumbled along and changed the world. I hope I can impact the world you gave me, the people, the parish, my family, my friends, whom you have blessed me with, that I was faithful to bringing Christ to them.